The morning Jacob came home was one I'll never forget. The sky had that deep orange tint that only shows up after a summer storm, the air thick with the scent of wet pine and soil. I stood on the porch with my old coffee mug, heart pounding like I was waiting for a long-lost friend. Then I saw his truck turn the corner, dust trailing behind, an American flag sticker gleaming proudly on the back window. My boy was home. Jacob had served 2 years overseas with the Marines, combat zones, humanitarian missions, training ops. He'd seen and done things no man his age should have had to. He was only 24, but his eyes had seen decades. When he stepped out of that truck, tall and strong but quieter than before, I knew he wasn't quite the same boy who'd left. His hair was cropped short, his stance rigid, but his smile, tired as it was, made every sleepless night worth it. "Hey, Dad," he said, voice low and steady. I pulled him into a hug that lasted longer than it should have. "Welcome home, Marine." He laughed softly. "Feels good to be back on home soil." That night, we grilled burgers on the porch, just like old times. He sat there in his camo jacket, sleeves rolled up, the insignia on his shoulder catching the porch light. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. You'd think a returning Marine would get at least a few hellos, maybe a flag on the mailbox. But this was Oak Ridge Estates, and Oak Ridge Estates wasn't known for warmth. It was known for rules. Our HOA president, Karen Whitmore, had turned the neighborhood into a dictatorship. She enforced bylaws like they were holy scripture, grass height, paint shades, mailbox style, even how long you could keep your trash can outside. But worst of all, she believed she was the law itself. I'd had my share of run-ins with her, warnings for leaving my truck in the driveway overnight, letters about unapproved Christmas decorations, even a citation for a non-compliant porch light. But I always paid the fines or repainted the fences because it wasn't worth the fight. Until now. The next afternoon, I was trimming the hedges when I saw Karen marching across the street, clipboard in hand, lips pursed so tight they looked glued together. "Mr. Cole," she started, not even offering a hello, "we need to talk about your son's clothing." I paused, wiping sweat off my forehead. "His clothing?" She gestured toward Jacob, who was washing his truck in the driveway, wearing his camo pants, boots, and a faded Marine Corps t-shirt. "Yes," she said with a grimace, "that outfit." Jacob turned, water dripping from the hose, brow furrowing. "Ma'am, this is my uniform." Karen sniffed. "Well, uniform or not, this neighborhood has an image to maintain. Military attire can be intimidating. Some of the residents feel uncomfortable." I felt my jaw tighten. "Intimidating?" "He's not carrying a rifle, he's washing his truck." "It's not about what he's doing," she said curtly. "It's about appearances. We strive for a peaceful, harmonious environment here. Camouflage and combat boots send the wrong message." Jacob's expression darkened. "The message that I serve my country?" Karen's fake smile didn't waver. "This isn't about patriotism, young man. It's about community standards. You'll find that we take them very seriously." I stepped between them. "Karen, let me make something clear. My son risked his life for this country. If his uniform bothers someone, that's their problem." She frowned, scribbling something on her clipboard. "I'll be filing a formal notice." "Consider this a warning," Jacob muttered under his breath. "Guess freedom of expression stops at the HOA line." Karen turned and walked off without another word, her heels clicking on the pavement like tiny hammers of judgment. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next few days, the harassment got worse. We received notices in the mail about unapproved flags and unauthorized outdoor displays. She even tried to fine us for having Jacob's truck parked at an angle inconsistent with driveway alignment. It was absurd. But then came the day everything changed. It was a warm Friday afternoon. Jacob had been cleaning out the garage, getting his gear organized. His uniform, his favorite one, the one he wore during his final deployment, was hanging on the clothesline out back, drying after he'd hand-washed it himself. I still remember him smiling at it, saying softly, "Feels good to see it clean again." That evening, I went to pick up groceries. Jacob stayed behind. When I returned an hour later, he was gone. I called his phone, no answer. But what caught my attention was the faint smell in the air. Smoke. I followed it down the street toward the HOA clubhouse. tucked behind the tennis courts. There behind the building, I saw a small fire pit flickering. My stomach dropped when I saw the fabric inside. Olive drab, charred, but still recognizable. Jacob's uniform. The name patch, Cole, was half melted, but I could still read it. My knees went weak. Karen stood nearby with another board member, chatting as if they were roasting marshmallows instead of burning a soldier's honor. My hands shook. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, my voice cracking across the still air. Karen jumped, startled, then turned with that same condescending tone. "Mr. Cole, please lower your voice. We were simply disposing of unauthorized materials left on HOA property. That's my son's uniform." She blinked, unmoved. "Then perhaps your son shouldn't leave military paraphernalia in public view." It's unsightly and distressing to some residents. I stepped forward, fist clenched, rage boiling in my chest. "You burned a Marine uniform. Do you have any idea what that means?" Karen's expression turned smug. "I have every right to enforce our bylaws, Mr. Cole. If you have a problem, take it up with the board." I could barely speak. My vision blurred with fury. Every instinct screamed to shout, to grab that clipboard and fling it into the fire, but I forced myself to breathe. I looked at her one last time and said, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Then I turned and walked away before I did something I'd regret. When I got home, Jacob was sitting on the porch steps, staring into nothing. His knuckles were white, jaw clenched. "They burned it, didn't they?" he said quietly without looking up. I couldn't find the words. I just nodded. He took a deep breath, then stood. "They didn't just burn a piece of fabric, Dad. They burned memories. They burned the blood, sweat, and tears of my brothers who didn't come home." I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Pain, fury, sorrow, all at once. "Son," I said gently, "we'll handle this right. You don't need to go after them." He looked at me and whispered, "No, Dad, I'm not going after them." He paused. "We are." The next morning, his truck was gone. I thought maybe he'd gone to the VA again, or out to cool his head. But hours later, I heard the rumble. Deep, steady, and unmistakable. Engines, dozens of them. By the time I stepped onto the porch, the horizon was lined with motorcycles. Big, loud, powerful machines flying Marine Corps flags. My heart stopped when I saw who led them. Jacob, riding tall and proud, with a convoy of his brothers-in-arms behind him. I was about to call him when I heard the rumble of engines in the distance. Not cars, motorcycles. A dozen, maybe more. By the time I stepped outside, a convoy of Marines in leather jackets and caps rolled into the neighborhood, engines roaring like thunder. They parked right in front of Karen's immaculate white house. The leader, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and mirrored sunglasses, swung off his bike. Jacob was beside him. "Morning, sir," the man said to me, shaking my hand firmly. "Name's Gunnery Sergeant Owens. Jacob told us what happened." Karen burst out her front door, clutching her pearls. "What is this? You can't bring these people here. This is private property." Owens smiled calmly. "Ma'am, we're here to pay respects to a fallen uniform. One of your people saw fit to burn it." "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, glancing at Jacob. "You can't just barge into a neighborhood like this." Owens raised a hand, cutting her off. "Ma'am, that uniform represents men who died defending your right to have this fancy little house. Burning it is a felony offense." Karen's face went pale. "You can't prove anything." Owens reached into his jacket and pulled out a clear plastic bag. Inside were the charred name patch and serial number tag Jacob had recovered from the ashes. "We already did." Neighbors began to gather on the sidewalks, whispering. Some looked horrified, others angry. For years, people had tolerated Karen's tyranny, but this was too far. Jacob stepped forward, his voice steady but low. "You didn't just burn fabric. You burned honor. My friends didn't make it home to see their families again. You had no right." Karen tried to speak, but her words caught in her throat. The Marines stood behind Jacob like a wall of silence and strength. Owens turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be holding a ceremony right here to retire the remains of that uniform properly, with respect."